And we're live.
Okay. Good afternoon. We're just going to give it a couple minutes just to make sure everybody joins us for the webinar. Thanks for tuning in. We'll just give another minute, and then Mark and I will get started this afternoon or this morning, wherever you happen to be located. So thanks for joining with us, and we'll give it another minute, and then we'll get started. Got a few more people joining. Hey, Mark, I was speaking with somebody this morning. They took a big swig of a drink, and I said, "Is that vodka?" And they said, "It's 10 o'clock this morning. I'm in the compliance group, so we get started early here." All right, let's get started. A little past the hour. Good afternoon, good morning. My name is Steve Ryder. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer here at Visory, and have a distinct pleasure of welcoming Mark Hurley to join us today. Mark is the CEO of Digital Privacy and Protection Company that provides personal digital protection service to clients of wealth managers throughout the United States and Canada. He has co-authored 10 major white papers on the wealth management industry, including a recent study that details steps that firms need to take to protect themselves and meet their obligations under the new SEC cybersecurity rules. He previously founded and sold undiscovered managers and fiduciary network, and was a managing director at Merrill Lynch and vice president at Goldman Sachs. He also served as a presidential appointee at the Bureau of the United States Treasury. And Mark is a West Point grad and a graduate from the Stanford Graduate School. So Mark, great to have you today, and I'll let you take it away. I will ask, I'll keep a track of questions. Mark has a great presentation and has a good flow to it. Feel free to write questions in the chat or in the Q&A. I'll keep track of them and be sure to ask Mark at the end for the ones that we have time to get to. So thanks, Mark, and I'll let you take it away.
Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's a privilege. My presentation today is designed to help anybody in the wealth management space be in a better position to have a more informed discussion with your clients about their cyber risks. And we're going to talk about why helping them with their cyber risks is now overwhelmingly in your interest as a financial advisor. The actual background on what we do, as Steve touched on, is my company provides a turnkey cyber protection service for clients and wealth managers. I designed it with the help of guys who went to West Point with either FBI cyber people or cyber warfare officers. It's turnkey, very cheap. We do everything for the client. Client pays for it. We're working with hundreds of firms. I'll have some information at the end if you're interested in learning more. All right, today's presentation. We're going to start with talking about why. Oh, and you should be eligible for CE credits for CFPs for this class. It's been approved for other firms. Why client personal cybersecurity is now a big issue if you're in the wealth management business. Then we're going to talk about specifically the threats that your client face, who the bad guys are, what they're trying to do to them, where they're at risk. Spent a fair amount of time looking at the issue of cyber privacy versus cybersecurity. People fail to realize how important and symbiotic both are, as well as the ways your clients are most likely to be attacked, what they need to do to protect themselves, and then we'll spend a minute telling you a little bit about what we do. All right. Cyber now is the single biggest threat to your client's wealth. It's not the markets going up or down. Cyber crime is bigger than the sale of illegal drugs worldwide combined. Bad news, if you're a wealth manager, you have a giant bullseye on you. And I could give you 4 pages of examples where wealth managers over the last 2 years have been breached and lost material amount of client assets. And the reason you're not hearing about them is the SEC has not yet finalized its rules, but once they are, this will become more widely known. If you are breached, you face 4 giant migraines, for lack of a better term. You should expect that your regulators are going to be all over you. This has become the priority of basically all the regulatory agencies, but you're also likely to get sued. Your custodians, to be generous, will freak out because they're ultimately the deep pocket here, and you should expect to get a very robust examination from them. And lastly, your clients, even if it's not their money, if they hear of another client losing money, it goes to strike at the very heart of the trusted relationship you have with them, that their money is safe. Now, I mentioned the SEC has new cyber rules. I would encourage everyone to take a look at them. These rules were proposed in April of 2022. They should have been finalized last October. The election obviously got in the way, but these are nonpartisan. And the question isn't whether they get approved, it's how soon. Our bet is late this year, early next year. That said, if there's a major breach, they'll probably get approved overnight because that's how the regulators tend to operate. And if you actually read the rules, they're going to mandate that you have, quote, adequate cybersecurity procedures and policies, but they do not explain what exactly that means. But they say that you're going to have to effectively certify they are adequate. And if you're breached, you're going to have to defend why they were not inadequate. In other words, you're going to have to disprove a negative, a very difficult position to be in to avoid an enforcement action. Additionally, you'll have to turn yourself into the SEC within 48 hours. You're going to tell every client what happened, why, how much money, not just the clients affected. Your disclosures are going to go up regarding counterparty risk from a cyber standpoint with clients. And you're going to have to tell every prospective client in writing what happened too. Loosely translated, getting breached is not a really good thing. Now, there are really two primary avenues for getting breached. One is a direct attack. And this is where someone tries to hack directly into your systems of the company. They have multiple ways that they try to do this. And Steve and I are publishing an article later this month, which says, look, if you want to get hit directly and get breached, a good way to do that is to use a local IT provider. The article is titled Using Your Podiatrist to Do Your Eye Surgery. These guys tend to be very good at doing technology, but not very good at cybersecurity. The only way to really protect yourself from direct attacks is to have a zero trust architecture. And that is almost extraordinarily difficult to get in. And quite candidly, the bad guys generally don't try because it's that difficult. Unfortunately, most of the breaches to date throughout the industry have been done indirectly, and they've been done through clients. And the reason, of course, is that most clients have little to no personal cybersecurity. And as anyone would tell you also in the cyberspace, that the largest attack surface is never the technology itself, but rather where people interface with the technology, because there's so many different ways you can get around the protections that are built into the technology. And if clients are not using good cybersecurity, it's almost inevitable at some point you're going to get breached, because the bad guys can get into any one of these routes and use that as a vector to get into your company systems and then trigger fraudulent transactions with you. All right. And because of this, if you're an advisor now, it's not just about helping protect your clients and helping them take care of them, which I know everybody in this call is obsessed with, but it also, quite candidly, it's about a matter of protecting your firm. Because again, if you get breached, this gets very ugly very quickly. All right, now let's talk about who the bad guys are. There are two primary groups of bad guys out there, and you can break them into two subgroups. If you went to downtown Beijing, you would see people walking down the street wearing suits and ties, carrying briefcases, and they're going to buildings, and their job every day is to go in and steal money. They're part of cyber gangs who are run by people who by day are either cyber warfare or intelligence officers attacking Western institutions quite successfully. They've breached the DoD, the CIA, the FBI, blockchain, cloud, etc. And by night, they're allowed to moonlight and steal money. And as long as their interests don't conflict with the state, they're allowed to openly operate in these countries. And this includes not just China, but also Russia, Iran, North Korea, and increasingly in Belarus. There also are thousands of very small but very sophisticated cyber gangs. There's a false perception out there that this is somebody in their mother's basement on a computer. Hollywood's created this image. That's not these guys. These guys are the earliest adopters of artificial intelligence software, and most of their attacks are automated, and they can hit multiple parties at once. And very, very sophisticated groups. And they're not located just offshore, but there are many of these gangs located onshore in the United States. And what they're trying to steal is money. Ideal target, of course, is a custodial account because that's most of the money, but they also want to hit bank accounts. Non-bank finance is something they find very, very compelling because it has a fraction of the protections typically that banks, custodians, and brokerages have. But they also want to steal what is non-public personal information that can be used to steal people's identities. Identity theft in the United States is a $54 billion annual industry, primarily stealing people's credit, but also increasingly used for health insurance, about 2.5 million families a year, and also tax returns. Now, if you're going to help your clients, the very first step I would encourage you to consider is helping them understand where they're at risk. And there's been a lot of hype around identity theft because there are multiple venture capital backed fintech firms that are spending lots of money on advertisements. So clients have seen a lot of ads about this. But the reality is, while you never want to have your identity stolen, the absolute risk from this is less than other things, believe it or not. Because if someone steals your credit, unless you're very, very malicious in the process, by federal statute and federal regulation, it's very hard for the lenders to collect from you. Effectively, the lenders are on the hook. The client is not going to have to write a check. Now, what most clients are completely unaware of until something very, very bad happens is that with everything else, they have 100% of the risk. For example, bank accounts. I know there's you say, well, look, I have my money in my bank account. They have FDIC insurance. Therefore, if someone steals my money, I get my money back. Wrong answer. FDIC insurance is to protect you in case the bank fails. It doesn't address someone looting your account. And if you ever read one of those online account agreements, they are breathtakingly one-sided in the favor of the bank. And this is no different with custodians or brokerages. And we had a family, for example, in the Northeast show up on our doorstep who had been breached. We've never had anybody get breached and lose money we worked with, but we had thousands of many, many people show up on our doorstep looking for help. And in this case, they lost $360,000 out of a Chase account because someone got into their email. And they went to Chase, and Chase said, read your agreement. Quite candidly, though, if you want to have real fun, next time you're at a conference, go talk to someone at one of the major custodians about this. My advice, I'd bring a bottle of Xanax. They go apoplectic over this issue because they view this as a $1 trillion moral hazard. They're holding the bag. They're spending king's ransom on cybersecurity, as are the banks, but they get breached because clients have lousy personal cybersecurity. So they've taken a position, look, if that happens, you're not getting your money back. And clients need to understand this before this happens. I'd also point out this is rather unremarkable than basically any other online commerce. If you took a look at the agreements you're forced to assent to, but of course never read before you say okay, those agreements are generally set up so that you are indemnifying the company as opposed to the company's indemnifying you, meaning if you're breached, they have a right to sue you. You don't have a right to sue them. And so the key point, if you're a financial advisor working with clients, is to make sure they understand if you're doing anything financially, anything commercially online, you are taking 100% of the risk, and there really is no recourse if something bad happens. And that's why having good personal cybersecurity is paramount. Now, as bad as this and depressing as this may sound, the second group of bad guys are downright much more frightening than the first group. They're made up of burglars and predators. You may recognize the gentleman in the middle photo. He used to do ads for Subway. His name's Jarrett. He's currently doing 15 years and 8 months in a federally run gated community. And what these people want to do is they want to target homes directly and indirectly, and they want to target kids. And the statistics are just scary. A recent study found that 4 out of 5 times that a house is burglarized, the burglars will actually use the improperly protected social media accounts of their victims to figure out when they're not home. Now, when I say improperly protected, they actually don't have to hack into the account. Unless you've turned on a host of privacy settings, the information in the accounts is effectively in the public domain. And that information in multiple ways will let someone know where someone is, and they can figure out how to target their house. Additionally, title fraud's out of control. How this works is, let's say you have a vacation home, the season ends, you go home at the end of the season, and someone then will go into the county assessor's office and make a filing claiming they bought the property. Now, there's no way for the assessor to know it's fraudulent. At that point, what they'll do is they will go in and they will then start trying to borrow money against the house, rent it out, or even try to sell it. And online stalking, that's the one thing, if you talk to the guys at the Bureau, this really worries them. This is just the part that's out of control. They even have a group at the FBI that just deals with kids being stalked online because it's become so widespread right now. Now, how do you help your clients? The first and foremost thing to do is help them understand the difference between and the symbiotic nature of cybersecurity and cyber privacy. Cybersecurity is about keeping people out of your online accounts. How do you keep people from getting in there? And we do this with a combination of passwords and multi-factor authentication and VPNs and all kinds of stuff that many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with. What most advisors have not really focused on is that if you don't protect your cyber privacy, which is limiting the non-public personal information about you that's online, and far more importantly, controlling who can access it, it's very easy to breach someone's cybersecurity. And I'm going to give you several examples of that in this presentation today. And so it's critical that clients understand that you have to have both, that without one, you really don't have the other. All right, let's talk a little about cybersecurity. As everyone on this call, I'm sure, is very familiar with, if you're connected to the internet, at some point you're going to be breached. It's just almost a certainty. The FBI gets breached, the DoD, CIA, everything gets breached at some point. And the importance that clients have to understand about cybersecurity, it's not that you won't get breached, is that you set up kind of like building a fort and you have multiple walls that the bad guys have to get past in order to get something of value. And what happens is if you set that up correctly, the complexity grows at an exponential rate. In other words, for a bad guy to be right once versus having to be right like 4 or 5 times to get something, it's not 5 times harder, it's to the 5th power harder. And so what you're trying to do is to make it so that very quickly the work and resources required to get to you just make it uneconomic. And this is the term the military uses for this, is you become a hardened target. And quite candidly, they move on to somebody else. Now, these are the 7 most common ways that your clients, or 6 most, should say 7. I'm sorry, there's a typo on the slide. These are the 7 most common ways your clients are likely to be breached. And I'll go through each of these quickly. We just added number 7 because it's become very widespread involving wealth management firms. About 1 million times a week, passwords are compromised. As I mentioned before, most of these attacks are automated now. So what would happen is when a company has a corporate data breach, the cyber criminals will grab that data from the data breach. They're also regularly collecting unprotected information online. They throw them into very sophisticated algorithms, and they hit thousands of accounts at once. And right now, it's gotten so ridiculously easy for the bad guys, it's hard to describe because most clients do not use sophisticated passwords to protect their accounts. And this is a study that was done by Hive. Hive is one of the top consulting firms in the industry. And what they talk about is how they can use computers and AI software to correctly guess passwords. And for the first time, at the end of 2023, they used ChatGPT in one of their simulations. And what they found was, and you can see this on the chart, that they now can correctly guess any 8-digit alphanumeric password, uppercase, lowercase, pardon me, symbols, numbers, etc., less than 1 second. So if a client is using an 8-digit, or if you're using an 8-digit password, they're not even going to downshift to get to that. They're just going to blow right by it. If you actually go down on the lower left-hand column, you can see if you're using simple passwords, let's say all letters, and it's 15 digits, they get that in 2 seconds. The good news is if you use lengthy, sophisticated ones, it takes extraordinary amounts of time for them to correctly guess them. In this study, they found it took 79 billion years to get to an 18-digit alphanumeric password. We recommend 20 to 25-digit ones. Now, the bad news is Amazon, Microsoft, and Google have all announced quantum computing chips. And as quantum computing accelerates, these numbers are going to compress very quickly. And our guess is within 5 years, we'll probably be using 50-digit ones on accounts. It's just they won't support them right now. Second way your clients are most likely to get breached is they don't realize when they buy a device from the store, like say this cell phone, it's automatically set up with its default settings to record all the credentials for every account that you access with the account in about 5 places. And the reason it's set up that way is these companies make an enormous amount of money collecting and selling their clients' information, both the device providers and the software providers. So in about 5 places, I can get your password and user ID if I can get in the device. Now, in order to turn this off, as well as turn on the necessary other security settings, there's about 60 settings on an Apple device that you have to engage and about 120 on a Windows. But if you do not, all a bad guy has to do is get in the device and all your accounts that you've accessed with it are compromised. And a very common attack, aside from just trying to directly hack into one of these things, which is not that challenging, is you're increasingly seeing what are called shoulder surfing attacks. And the FBI has an alert about this, where you're at a bar or restaurant, you're not paying attention, someone looks over your shoulder as you put the passcode in, with the help of a Confederate, they distract you, they steal the device, and then they're off to the races. The third most common way that your clients are likely to get breached is through their smart home technology. Cyber criminals intentionally target homes with this because very few people set up their network securely. As I'm sure undoubtedly everybody on this call realizes, if you get into a network, you can basically see what everyone else is doing unless people are encrypting their online traffic. And so as a consequence, what the cyber criminals will do is they'll pick a single device on the network, get in, and then sit and wait. We had a client of ours who was a senior executive financial services company with one of the largest aggregators who got hit suddenly one day. Unfortunately, there were diligences at the time, so our guys were able to get in and he didn't have a catastrophic financial event. But we figured out they went through the doorbell and they sat there for 2 weeks copying passwords. And then they instantly locked him out of all of his devices. They got into his personal accounts. They locked him out of even his home network, and they got into his work accounts. Now, the only way clients can prevent something like this happening to them is that every piece of equipment connected to the home Wi-Fi network has to have a unique, randomly generated 20 to 25 digit alphanumeric password. And one should never let a client's family use their family name on the home Wi-Fi. Just makes it too easy. The fourth most common way people get breached are computer viruses. I'm sure everyone on this call realizes that there's a daily arms race between the good guys and the bad guys, people writing the malware, the people writing the antivirus. But I'm sure everyone else on this call also can remember there's not too long ago, there was this idea that you wouldn't have a problem in terms of getting breached because you'd have an authenticator app, and that app would have a random number generator for your financial accounts. And so since you're the only person who had that, even if they guessed the password, they couldn't get around this level of protection. It did not take the people who write malware very long to come up with malware that breached the authenticator apps. That's why they're not widely used anymore and that heavily relied upon. Now, your clients have been told never click on these things. About 1.5 billion times a day, these things are sent out. Between 2 and 300 million times a day, somebody clicks on one of these links. The risk, if I'm an advisor, that would very much concern me, and we've seen multiple breaches this way, is that the bad guys are now using malware in an indirect attack through clients to get to you. And what they'll do is they'll breach a client's personal email account. Again, they're doing this with computers. They're automatically reading it. They're not having, it's not like some guy having to spend hundreds of hours figuring it out. And they'll identify communications you may have sent them. And those communications will include an attachment. They'll take that attachment, they'll infect it, and they'll send you an email back and ask you to look at it. You think it being from the client, well, you click on it, then you got a virus into your systems, and now you got a problem. And this is a very, very common way of seeing breaches occur. We saw a $2.5 million home closing get stolen this way. Look, all this highlights the fact that unless you can get your clients to act with better personal cybersecurity, or at least the ones that you cannot do that, you're going to have to be increasingly careful how you interact with them because you're not really sure who you're going to be talking to. The fifth most common way your clients are likely to get breached is they will effectively give away their passwords by using public Wi-Fi without encrypting their online traffic. As we mentioned before, if you're on a network, everybody else can see what you're doing. If you're using it, you're at a Starbucks or a hotel, you're using the free Wi-Fi, there are people who will sit there all day and watch. In fact, I would encourage anybody the next time you go to a coffee shop, take a look around. You may see somebody sitting there sipping coffee all day, working on a computer. And my view is it's probably likely they're just copying passwords, which they can sell. The way clients need to protect themselves is they need to get software that encrypts their online traffic, which is called a virtual private network or a VPN. And I'll touch on that a little bit more later. The sixth most common way that people get breached is that they're foolish enough ever to plug their device into a public charging station without using the proper protection. These things are generally assembled in China, and it's almost like using a shared needle. It's not a question of whether you're going to get a virus. It's a question of when, if you use one of these things. Additionally, rental car, if you plug your device into a rental car, it automatically downloads your data. So you're in a position, if you're using either one of these, that they're already taking your data, which someone's going to probably sell to criminals, and you have a high likelihood of getting infected. Good news is it's not hard to protect yourself if you're going to use one of these things. This is called a USB blocker. There you can buy them from Walmart, Amazon for like $2. I buy a bag of 10. I carry them with me wherever I go. But mind you, it's not just public charging stations and rental cars you worry about, because increasingly to help people charge their devices, the backs of airplane seats have these things now. And same thing with hotels. Allow you to go in with a USB cord. And if you're plugging in and you're not protecting it, you're creating enormous risks of being breached. And clients should need to know they need to use these types of devices to protect themselves if they're going to do that. The seventh most common way people are getting breached, and this is the one we just added recently, is what are called phishing attacks. And this has gone from standing still to about a $40 billion tactic in less than a year. And it involves a very, very aggressive style of targeting your clients. Now, what they're doing is they will pose either as a bank, a custodian, or as the advisor, and they will spoof your caller ID. We saw this with a firm in the Northeast recently. Their clients start getting calls thinking it was from the wealth manager. And what they'll say is, oh my goodness, Steve's on an airplane right now, so he can't call you. He texted me, but he got notified that someone's into your Schwab account. So we need you to open up right away. And they'll know a lot about the client. They'll know a lot about the firm. And they're great con men. We had 2 clients hit this way in the last 4 weeks. Fortunately, they didn't have damage. But they'll get the person very concerned. They'll get them to open it up. Obviously, multi-factor authentication message gets sent to them. They'll say, what number was just sent to you? They get that. They can come right into the account. And then they'll change the password so they can access it. And what winds up happening is they can loot the account and the client had no idea. And they really thought it was someone from your organization or from the custodian or from the bank helping them. And it's hard to overstate how slick these guys are. We train all of our clients just never to do this, to call us immediately. And what clients have to understand is that if you have a problem with one of your accounts, they're not going to call you. They're just going to freeze the account. Banks don't call. Custodians don't call. They just freeze accounts. That's how they work these things. And clients have to understand this is a scam. But as I said, we train people on this and they started actually going on this path. Fortunately, they'd had a class recently and they said, wait a minute, I got to call my cyber advisor, and we cut it off at the pass. But this is, like I said, it's gone from standing still to 40 billion, and you guys are ideal targets for this. All right, now let's talk about cyber privacy. As I mentioned, you can't have cyber privacy without cybersecurity, or cybersecurity without cyber privacy, and vice versa. The source of the problem for cyber privacy is that most of the technology that's been built and sold and made great fortunes in our country over the last 30 years has been designed to have an economic model that relies heavily on collecting people's information and selling it. Meta, for example, makes 60 billion a year selling people's information. Similarly, Amazon makes a fortune selling information. I think you may have seen Warren Buffett's comment. He never understood their economic model that was more about information than selling goods. What happens is they set up their default settings on all of their apps and devices so that automatically your information is collected, gathered, and then sold, given to them, and they can sell it to third parties. What's problematic about that is they're not the only people who can access the information. Criminals can, and these are very, very bad guys, and I'll get into some examples of that shortly. Now, the companies give you the ability to opt out of this, but they make it complicated. There's a host of settings you have to turn on. By our estimate, there's about 80 settings on Meta you need to engage to properly protect yourself. There's 115 on LinkedIn that we recommend people turn on to protect themselves. Litany on Amazon, Spotify, all these apps have different things you have to turn on. But if you don't turn them on, you're making it incredibly easy for the bad guys. For example, many of your clients undoubtedly have a social media account where they've actually put in their life story, a biography, which they update regularly of what they're doing daily. They may even have their birthday. Well, it's important to understand that, for example, identity theft, which while it's not the end of the world, it's an enormous pain in the you-know-what to get fixed. It's very easy to steal your identity. The guy that Leonardo DiCaprio played in the movie Catch Me If You Can, Frank Abagnale, he likes to say, if I know where you're born, I know what your birthday is, I know your name, I'm 98% of the way to stealing your identity. Okay, if I can go see your whole life story, I can see all this other information you're regularly updating, telling the world what you're doing. It's not whether your identity gets stolen. The question is, how soon will it happen? And the real pain is if they can get your health insurance, you could be locked out of using your health insurance for many, many months. More problematic for the wealth management industry of late has been the emergence of what are called deep fakes. And this is something that's really the technology was available around 2017, but the bad guys have only started widely using this stuff in the last 1.5 to 2 years. And what they will do is they will go into an improperly protected client's social media account. They will download a video and they will clone their voices and images. There are sites that will clone voices accurately enough to defeat voice recognition software. For example, one of the large custodians has an option where you don't have to put in the passcode. You can instead rely on their voice recognition. And an advisor on the East Coast told me recently that she had a client that had turned that on, and someone went in and downloaded a video, cloned the client's voice, and they stole $2 million out of a retirement account. We are seeing these used. For example, we saw a home closing or a purchase of an apartment in Paris was stolen this way. What happened there was the family had been planning for a great deal of time to buy an apartment in Paris. They communicated by email with the advisor. Unfortunately, one of the family members had plugged a device into a public charging station. It got infected. Therefore, the bad guys had gotten into the email and with their computers seen this was coming. They waited for the family to take off for Paris. They then reset the passcode, contacted the advisor and said, we need $2 million sent to this account. The advisor came back and said, wait a minute, guys, this is a lot of money. I need to do a call with you. But because the family had also not protected their social media accounts, it was very easy for the bad guys to go in and clone various members of the family's voices and profile the family. They also were able to get into the telecom account of the client and redirect the SIM card. So the call, instead of going to the client, went to the criminal. And the advisor had a 45-minute call with who they thought were the client. It was not the client, and bye-bye $2 million. So this is this is why I say you don't have cybersecurity without cyber privacy. This is a critical example of why that's so important. Um, I mentioned, and let's be clear, you no longer know who you are talking with when you're talking to someone on a cell phone. You just don't, because it's not that hard to change this. It used to be you could walk by somebody and copy their SIM card just by walking by them. Then the telecom companies switched to electronic SIM cards. So what the cyber criminals are doing now is they're going directly into hacking directly into the telecom accounts of the clients and diverting, readdressing the SIM card to their phone. So you just don't know who you're talking to, and spoofing a caller ID is not very hard for anybody to do that. The other thing I mentioned earlier about home robberies, and here's an example of how burglaries are increasingly being done. You may not realize this, but there are many, many different apps out there that either have tagging or facial recognition capability. And unless you engage all the settings to prevent that from happening, what happens is that if you show up with a photo anywhere on the web, you're immediately identified. So for example, let's say you're off on a trip with a group of friends, someone takes a team photo, even if they don't put it in your account, they just put it in their account. If their account's not protected, you'll be identified in that photo. And that's how they know when to rob your house. Now, as scary as all this stuff is, what clients have to understand, and we don't get quite this gnarly with the clients when we do classes for them, but you need to know this as advisors, is this is what child predators use. They increasingly target parents and grandparents' social media accounts. And what they will do is go in and pull down information about kids and profile them. They'll know who their friends are, what schools they go to, all their activities. And then they will connect with a child online on an anonymous basis in one of these online chat rooms, posing as one of their peers, ideally someone of the opposite sex. And over time, they'll groom them. In other words, get their confidence. And they'll then get the child to share something very personal and embarrassing with them. And then they'll turn around and start blackmailing the child. This is a couple examples. Again, I used to show these to clients, but they got too freaked out. So I usually just share it with the advisors. The genius in the upper left-hand corner is a guy part of an LA cyber gang. He targeted a teenage boy in Atlanta. Kid was an honor student, supposed to have been a wonderful kid. He thought he met the love of his life online. They spent months talking. Eventually, the gentleman on the left sent a photo of a naked young lady to the gentleman on the right. He asked to be reciprocated. The gentleman on the right sent a photo back of him naked. And then the guy on the left started blackmailing him, and the kid committed suicide. This happens 10 to 15 times a month. Okay, clients got to understand this is really serious stuff. As bad as that is, the genius in the lower left-hand corner was a former Jersey police officer who wound up connecting up with a 15-year-old girl online. Same exact thing, except in this case, he drove from New Jersey to LA, killed her parents, burned the house down, and kidnapped the daughter. The FBI fortunately got the girl back. All right, that's the bad news. The good news, it's not hard to help protect your clients. And what we do is our service anybody could do. I'm going to show you what that is. And what you do is you want to get a client to operate online what is called basic cyber hygiene. And it's a combination of widely available, inexpensive technology and a bunch of common sense steps. I mentioned earlier a virtual private network. This is software that encrypts your online traffic. We recommend Surfshark. It's very easy to use. And what it does is it makes it so if someone is even if you're on a public network, they can't see what you're doing on your device. Um, it's almost impossible unless you're a savant to remember 200-300 different accounts, each with unique randomly generated 20-25 digit alphanumeric passwords. So instead you use what's called a password manager. It's encrypted software. We recommend Keeper. The great thing about these things are once they're set up, all the client has to remember is the password to get into the password manager. And then it opens up, they click on an account, they go right to the account. It auto-populates like 80% of the time. The rest of the time, they just have to click on it. You'll find once your clients are set up like this, they think it's phenomenal. But one thing that's critical, though, is you've got to get your clients to write down the passcode and put it in a safe because they're the only ones that are going to have that. If anything ever happens to them, their family won't be able to get in. The third thing everyone should have is a private email. Now, I can loot anybody's bank account here online by simply getting into your email. And what I would do is get into your email and then go to whatever your financial institutions are and click on the forgot password link, and they'll send a reset back to the email. So what people need to have to protect themselves is a separate private email, a pay-for service, not linked to anything else, not one of the free ones, and you make it anonymous. And you use this email solely for account recovery purposes. And as a consequence, what would happen then is if someone hit the reset password link, it would go to this email as opposed to the regular daily use email. The bad guys don't even know this exists, and much less, it's very, very hard for them to access it. What the client would do then is get all the software, put it on their devices, get all their accounts, put them in a password manager, reset all the passwords, similarly with the smart home technology, store it in the password manager. And then the real heavy lift are all the settings. As I mentioned, you have to turn about 60 settings on an Apple device, 120 on Windows, all in counting search engines, browsers, apps, all the things you need to do, including multi-factor authentication. There's about 900 settings that someone has to turn on. And our estimate, first time you do this will take you about 150 hours. But if someone does this, they are now a hardened target. And I want to emphasize, if they don't do this, it doesn't matter what else they do. They don't have cybersecurity because there's just so many different avenues they can get around whatever else they're doing. Now, the second layer of defense everybody should have on a personal level is most of the people who actually steal your credentials don't have offshore operations. So instead, there's an aftermarket where they sell them. And that's part of the internet called the dark web. There are services you can sign up for that will allow you to track what's going on online in terms of whether any of your stuff's up for sale, whether your bank account number pops up, whether your custodial account number, your credit card, something like that. Additionally, everyone should register their homes for notifications of filings with their local county assessor's office. This is the only way to stop title fraud. And what will happen is if a bad guy comes and makes a filing, you'll get notified and then they can tell the county assessor to stop it. It's the only way to stop this type of attack. Credit reports, we hear a lot of hype about those. I want to emphasize, you should review them at least once a year. That said, most identity theft is not of adults, it's of kids. And it's because the cyber criminals can use a kid's identity and steal it 5 or 6 times before anybody figures this out. So as a consequence, it's critical to check once a year to see if your kids have credit reports. Otherwise, they can wake up and take years to get credit after they become adults. Lastly, there's ever a problem. These things do not get better with time. It's no different like with your companies. If you get breached, you got to get on it right away. It's the same thing for clients. One of the silliest things I've ever heard is people saying, well, all you need to do is freeze your credit. Baloney. we've never had anybody get breached and lose money. We've had many, many people show up on our doorstep. We've been to the FBI, the passport office, even to the telecom store, to Apple store. I mean, it really is case specific. Lastly, it's important to emphasize to your clients, this is not a solution. This is a process. They're going to get new devices. They're going to lose devices. They're going to retire devices. They're going to get new accounts, new smart home technology. And companies do not like it when you turn on the privacy settings. So as a consequence, about once a year, they change them. LinkedIn is particularly notorious for this. And so you have to go back and reset them. About once a year, you have to do a full reset up, but on an ongoing basis, you have to keep this current if it's going to actually help protect anybody. But if you do that, very, very hard to hit clients, very, very hard to get to them. Last part I just want to touch on for 1 or 2 slides, and then I'll take questions. What do we do as a company? We give free classes to advisors like the one I'm doing right now, which you get CE credits. So we'd be happy to do it for your entire firm if that would be useful. And we do them for clients regularly. And then our service, which the classes themselves are non-commercial, but at the end, there's always a couple slides in case someone wants to learn about what our service is. Our service is we do all this stuff for the client. They cost $35 a month. We take care of everything. It's high touch. It's concierge. And we do all the subsequent ongoing risk. It's all inclusive, period. And the reason why we picked up 71 more firms last month that started working with us. The reason why we think we've gotten the interest we have is because, look, if you get breached, you're going to be in this odd position of dealing with your regulators and worrying about getting sued, et cetera, et cetera. You're in a fundamentally different position if, one, you've trained your employees on these risks so they can advise the client. Number two, you've done classes for the client so they've been warned about the risks, and you've offered them an alternative if they don't want to do it for themselves. It just fundamentally shifts a lot of that risk away from you because the regulators get this. They talk about helping clients with cybersecurity as a sign of a mature cybersecurity program. Very, very hard to get sued if you warn clients about this and there's a clear record about it. Your custodians like this. And more importantly, the clients. It's one thing for a client to learn somebody lost money. It's another thing if something really bad happens, but the guy who lost the money wasn't paying attention to what the advisor said. If anybody would like to, learn more about what we do, we set up a landing page on our website. Just come on into this thing. Give us your contact info. You will get a text message, which will send a link to my calendar, and I'd be happy to schedule 20, 30 minutes, answer any questions you have. That's my presentation. Be happy to take any questions.
Mark, thank you. A lot of information. You move at a very fast pace, as you know. But a lot of information, and very thankful for that. I know Visory's been trying to use your services or recommending you to different clients who are talking about their clients and protecting their clients. And Mark has done some client presentations as well for Visory, which has been very, very helpful. I've been asked in the past to do some presentations for our clients for a very similar reason Mark's been asked. But I really believe that the service is invaluable to protect your client's client. I have a few questions, things I want to pick up, and some things that I think for maybe helpful for clarification that I find valuable. So a couple things. First of all, password manager, Mark, great idea. A couple things I want to add to that. First of all, one other great thing about a password manager is it protects you from going to a website that is fraudulent, because the password manager won't know the password to that website. So that's another great value. I don't know, Keeper, I know LastPass does this, Mark, but does Keeper do this, have like an emergency access? So I know with LastPass, for example, if something happens to me, there's a 72-hour window where, my wife can request my password, access my password manager. If I don't respond at the 72-hour mark, she'll get access to it. If I do respond, obviously I can block it. Does Keeper have anything like that? As you
Yeah,
said,
yeah, Keeper has similar things, but the way we do it is because we're doing a high touch concierge service. We do everything for the client. We just have the client call us if there's a problem, and we get that taken care of. That's how we
yeah,
handle it. My concern with LastPass is that if you actually read through their disclosures, they collect and sell the information of all their clients. And that's the reason we turn it down. We think it's a very secure password manager, but uh, we think cyber privacy is very, very important, and that's why
yeah,
we don't use them. We discovered that in our diligence process. The other thing
yeah,
I would caution your listeners to is there are enormous amounts of different providers out there of different types of technology. One, if they're low cost or free, that means they're collecting and selling your info because that's how they make money.
right.
But also, there are companies that, if you actually trace through the ownership, that are shell companies that track back to Russia, China, Iran, or North Korea. So you actually have to really do your homework on them. And we diligence about 100 different providers because we weren't sure that the information that would be protected was actually being compromised in an indirect fashion.
Mark, a question I was going to answer. Or ask. So for airport charging, okay to use an AC/DC charger, attach it to
Yes,
USB and actually
absolutely.
plug it into 110. That's the best way to go, right? I mean, that's the best way
Right.
to go.
If you can find something like that, that's right. If there's one available, if you're not in a scrum with 10 other passengers trying to use it, that's right.
Okay. Any thoughts of Dashlane as a password keeper?
It's good. It's good.
Yeah.
What we liked about Keeper, look, our client average age is 70. And so the key part of this is that how do you make it easy for clients? If you're going to help protect clients, it has to meet three clear criteria. Number one, it can't make getting set up or continue to operate online burdensome. Otherwise, they'll just get pissed off and won't do it. Number two, it can't be expensive. We find there's an enormous price elasticity to people protect themselves. And that's why we drilled ours thing down to a price that's below everybody else and it's very inexpensive. And number three, clients would rather be insecure than give up their privacy. That was the thing that stunned us because we looked at adding some additional layers of protection. If it meant anything where we could monitor their network or anything like that, they wanted nothing to do with it. Clients are more worried about that than anything else. Keep in mind, most people don't realize this is like a colonoscopy. You don't realize you have a real problem until it's too late. And so most people don't do colonoscopy, say, oh, it's a pain to do this and blah, 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 blah. And then after something really bad happens, there's nothing you can do. Similarly here, it's not certain you're going to be breached, but boy, if you do get breached and you don't do this, God, you got a bad outcome.
Mark, one question here, without having you redo a good chunk of your presentation, is kind of a high level, maybe step by step of what do you do to work with your clients to step through all those security changes, phone numbers, computer,
Yeah,
home networks, maybe
all
again
the
a high
stuff I'm
level
talking,
without getting
yeah, all
into
the
the
stuff I'm
deep
talking about here
detail.
is we come in on a Zoom appointment. It takes about 3 hours of access to the devices, about 45 minutes of the client's time. Our software is set up so we can never see, copy, or access any passwords at any time. We record the appointment. We give a copy to the client. We're happy to give one to the advisor. We have an internal group that reviews them for quality assurance. And we will come in and we'll get all of their online accounts. We'll install the software to start with. We provide everything, including the software. And it's off the shelf. We like it because it's widely used, it's independently vetted. But as I said before, though, most importantly, it's easy to use. And then what we do is we get all the clients' online accounts, we put them in a password manager, and we reset every one of the passwords for the client on a blind basis. It looks like a NASCAR pit crew working on our devices, is the way I think of this, because there's multiple people doing things at once. But again, we're not changing anything. We're just using the existing technology that's available, as well as the software that comes with the password manager. And then we'll do the same thing with the smart home technology to make the home network secure and put all that information in the password manager, and the client will have the password to the password manager, and we'll have a copy of put in their safe. Then we'll go in and do all the settings I'm talking about. And this is the real heavy lift. As I mentioned, there are about 60 settings you have to turn on a Apple device, about 120 on Windows. For example, your cell phone, when you get it from the Apple Store, it comes with the ability to automatically back up your encryption, encrypt your backups. In other words, at night, once every couple of weeks when it does this backup, there's a way to encrypt that. Now, if you don't, and someone's somehow gotten your home network, they can simply just take all your information and download it. You can prevent that, but the switch has to be turned on. For first, you have to figure where it is and then turn it on. Similarly, there's a firewall that comes with a MacBook. It's not turned on when you get it. Okay, there's a litany of things you got to turn on to make the device usable, as well as to have it stop recording information you don't want stored on the device. And then you have to go over to the navigate many pages of different social media apps, various financial services apps, engage multi-factor authentication, put in a private email, all that kind of stuff. And we do all of this in one appointment. It takes about 3 hours. It's a little bit frenetic. Some clients have like 1,000 accounts, so it takes maybe a second appointment, but it's all included. And then once we get them set up, we do all the risk management. We've subscribed with the top, or contracted with the top dark web search company we think in the world, which is a firm called Dark Owl. They work with the Israelis and the Ukrainians, and we collect info from clients that we will track to see if it's being sold on the dark web. But understand, we collect it because we're paranoid people in a way so that even if we got breached, it wouldn't be usable. Like, for example, we want your credit card number. We don't want your 3 digits. We don't want your expiration date. We just want your bank account number. We keep that information offline in a secure facility. We don't disclose where it's at. We go on in random intervals and check to see if anything pops up. We also register homes for notifications of filings on them. We can do this about 80% of the time for the client. The other 20% of the time, we'll walk them through the steps and show them how to do it. And then once a year, we'll go in and pull down their credit reports. We'll check to see if their kids have credit reports. We'll review them with them. And then if there's ever a problem, I got people that are very good at fixing stuff. Not because we've had problems, but because we've had a lot of people who've had problems. We take care of everything for the client. And then all this stuff's got to be updated regularly and systematically. And we do this, we have a process. For example, if you have a MacBook, the recent iOS update that came out turned off 2 of the key privacy settings on it. So we had to go to all of our clients with MacBooks and schedule a 5-minute appointment and turn them back on. But once a year, we come back in and do a full Monty reset for the client to keep them current. And we tell our clients the only thing that'll ever upset us is if you don't call us. We're always available 24/7. We never close. Just give us a call. This is how we prevent bad things from happening.
Thanks, Mark. Do you, another question was, do you have a tiered offering? I know you have a number of your clients that provide the service as a service to their clients. Do you have a tiered offering for somebody who wants to do that and offer your service to their client?
Right. Let's be clear. Our core client is the client of wealth managers. It's not
Correct.
And the client can only get this service through a wealth manager. They cannot get it directly. Now,
Can the wealth manager pay for that service directly to
yes,
you,
in
or is
certain
it
instances
actually
they
paid through
have.
the client?
Yeah, in certain
Okay.
instances they have, and again, it all depends on volume and structure, et cetera. What we have found remarkable though is that, for example, we have one firm that's paying for a large number of their clients, but what surprised us was for every client that signed up where they paid for it, we got 2 that didn't sign up, that didn't pay for it, that they didn't pay for it. See, there seems not to be that much price elasticity at about $35 a month. And what we found is that it's more about, is the advisor helping the client understand their risks? Because once they realize the risks that they're facing, there's not much price elasticity. They just want to take care of this and get it protected.
Okay.
But we're happy to talk to
Back to
anybody about that. We do this with lots of firms all over the country.
okay. Um, I assume you help with the kids' credit. You freeze their credit as well, Mark. Safe to assume.
Yeah, you can actually do that, but again, when you're underage, that's more complicated. And also,
Yeah.
When
Okay.
you freeze somebody's credit, you understand if you lose the code to unfreeze it, it's good luck ever getting it unfrozen. And if
Yeah.
you freeze a kid's credit at 6 and they turn 18, 12-year gap, you might lose something. So
Yeah.
again, there's a lot of hype around freezing credit. Okay, and understand again, you're not ultimately liable. The better way, in our view, to do this is to check regularly. To go in at least once a year, take a look at your credit report. Uh, the risk with identity theft is less they're going to steal your credit because you're not that liable. I mean, it's a risk, but you're not having to write a check there. The real risk is they could use that identity theft to try to get around your cybersecurity on your accounts. So many of you may have heard about the breach that Fidelity had in August, and then, of course, didn't disclose till October. We had a very small number of our clients pop up on the dark web, and it wasn't their account passwords, but rather it was some non-public personal information that these criminals had stolen. And what we did with them is we went to each of their financial accounts and put some extra levels of protection on it, just because we were worried they would use that. And what they would do is they'd say try to log in 4 or 5 times, then get the account locked out, and then they would call the bank and say, "Oh my goodness, I put the wrong password in. I need to reset it." And then the bank will say, "Well, what's your mother's maiden name? What's your social security number? What's the dog's name?" Something like that, because they all tend to use the same type of information. So in that case, we went in, layered in some extra protections to prevent that risk.
Any good VPNs or bad VPNs that you might suggest? Anyone
Yeah,
to
I
avoid?
look there. I'd rather not get sued, but let me just say the ones we
Eh,
like. How's that? Does that sound good?
Should we
Uh,
turn off the recording and then you can answer it?
Yeah, let me just say that there's some very good technology out there. The one
How
that
about
you
you
hear,
list the good ones if you don't want to get,
well, the one
you
you hear a
don't,
lot about, like we said, we like Surfshark.
right,
We
right,
diligence all of them. It's the only one that's passed the full scale audit. The only one you hear a lot about, for example, is NordVPN.
Lord,
And they
yeah,
have good technology. It's expensive, but understand their core client is trying to dodge governments as much as they're trying to dodge criminals. So, like for
right,
example, they have in their documents, if we're subpoenaed by a government, we'll shift to another country like the next day.
yeah,
Okay. All right.
okay,
And that may be a bit overkill for your clients. Okay. But
yeah,
your clients have to figure what they want. We use a Canadian company for the private email. It's called OpenSRS. It's very good. And Keeper's a US company. It's very good. And we're not wed to the technology. We find anything better, we'll use something else. But
okay,
yeah, the other thing that's important on a VPN is it has to have a pause button. Most people don't realize that when you use a VPN, there's a tendency of what's called latency, which means because it's making you anonymous, some sites don't make it very difficult for you to connect with them, particularly streaming sites. So what you want
right,
is a
right,
VPN that you push a button that pauses the VPN for a couple minutes. You can connect, and then it comes automatically back on. And that's one of the things we really liked about Surfshark. It has that capability.
okay. CFP, someone was asking about, didn't ask our CFP, how do they get CE credits for this?
The firm, I'll give you a name of a firm that was approved for it recently by the CFP board. It's the identical verbatim presentation. It was called the Boulay Group, big firm in Minnesota. They signed off on it. So you just mentioned
But
they
so how do you go about getting the CFP credits actually? Because
They have to talk to their local CFP people about that, okay? Because
okay,
I mean, the
okay,
CFP board is more Byzantine than the Vatican, okay? So trying to navigate that, we got it approved. The presentation has been approved for CFP credits. They need to point out that it's been approved for other firms by the CFP board for this exact presentation.
okay, and then they can get the credits.
Right.
That's the best way to do it. Okay. Um, okay. Are there any other questions that you might have? Anybody? I don't see any others that I don't think we've covered.
All right. Well, guys, hang on a second here. If you would like to talk more, I'll put this thing back up so if someone can see it, they get a
Yeah,
chance
so
to write
people can
it down.
reach out to you would be helpful,
Yeah,
I think,
please just
Mark.
reach out. We'll schedule 20, 30 minutes. Happy to share with you. As I said, we're working with a lot of different firms right now across the country on this. Happy to come and teach a free class the class we did just here, do for all your employees. Happy to do a similar class for your clients.
And I want to add Mark too. I mean, and just so people know Mark. So Mark, when Mark says free, he means free. I mean, there's no strings attached to it. He's done some really great free classes for our clients, which is wealth managers' clients, which is your clients, and have been really well received. And it's been very, very helpful. So there's some great value add. If you want to use Mark services for your clients, have them do a webinar, seminar, whatever you want that would, I think, have some value to your clients. Again, Visory's seen a lot of value from using Mark, and I know anybody attending here could see some value to present to your clients to help them be more secure. Don't have to use Mark's services. Mark's given some good tips and tricks as well, but there's a lot to it, and Mark's company does a phenomenal job. Mark, remember what was the first beta when you said you have it down to 3 hours? But what was the first time when you did it?
First time we did this. First off, thank you for everything you said. It's very kind. We have a phenomenal relationship with Visory. Guys, if you're using a local IT provider and you're not talking to them, I would recommend some serious psychiatric help. Okay, but separate from that, yeah, the first time we tried to do this on our own, we thought we knew what we were doing. We spent many months studying. It took us 75 man hours. We didn't think we had a business, but with the help of friends who let me learn to shave on their faces over about 18 months, we got this down to one single 3-hour appointment. And we think that's the real tipping point for clients. They want to get set up, they want it to be painless, and they want it afterwards to be easy to use. And that's what we spent those 18 months developing. And now we've got several hundred firms we're working with and their clients.
Sure. Hey, Mark, thank you. We're almost at the top of the hour. Can't thank you enough for this presentation today. I hope folks who joined us did find it valuable. Mark's contact information's on the screen. If anything we can help you with, either Advisory or Mark's company, digital protection and privacy, privacy and protection actually, but let us know. And again, thank you for attending this afternoon or this morning.
Thank you very much.